Welcome back, listeners, to the place where the shadows speak. This is Gloomwood Radio, and tonight we have a story that has stuck with me for a very long time. Before we begin, a word of caution. The story you're about to hear is intense and deals with some very heavy themes. It comes to us from a listener in Thailand, a country with deep-rooted beliefs about the spirit world that might be different from your own. So please, listen with an open mind. Treat this as a story, a chilling piece of folklore shared for the sake of entertainment. And as always, if you appreciate these journeys into the dark, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this with someone who enjoys the thrill. Subscribe for more. And a super thanks always helps to keep our signal broadcasting through the night. All right, let's get into it. This story is called The Haunting, sent in by our listener. Our story follows a group of friends. Our narrator, let's call him Danai, his girlfriend, another friend, and a man named Krit. They had planned a camping trip down in the south of Thailand during a school break. Krit was a local to the area, so he was waiting there to guide them. Now, it's important to understand Krit's personality. He was arrogant, maybe even reckless. He feared nothing and respected no one, a trait that would prove to be his undoing. The day of the trip arrived. Danai and the others drove down, picked up Krit, and headed towards the remote campsite. The road was treacherous, winding along cliffs with steep drops into the valleys below. As they rounded a sharp bend, they saw flashing lights and a small crowd of villagers and emergency workers gathered by the roadside. There had been an accident. They pulled over and ran to see what had happened. A local shuttle truck, the kind with 2 benches in the back, had gone off the road and plunged into the ravine. It was a deep fall, maybe 30 or 40 meters. There were injured people, and there were fatalities. The scene was chaotic. Without a second thought, the men in the group, Danai and Krit included, scrambled down the steep incline to help. The women stayed up top to assist the injured as they were brought up. Down in the wreckage, as they worked to pull survivors free, they saw her. In the front passenger seat, a pregnant woman had been crushed by the impact. She was gone. The rescue team worked painstakingly to free her body from the mangled cab. It was a difficult and somber task. They finally managed to lay her gently on the ground beside the wreck. As everyone else turned their attention back to the injured, Krit did something unthinkable. He walked over to the deceased woman's body, lifted her skirt, and he pulled the unborn baby out from her womb, which had been horrifically exposed by the force of the crash. He held the tiny, lifeless form up for everyone to see, a grotesque trophy. "Hey, look at this!" he shouted, a twisted grin on his face. The impact was so strong, the baby just popped out.
A wave of shock and horror silenced the entire rescue site. The rescuers, the villagers, his own friends, everyone stared at him in disbelief. "Kid, put that down. What are you doing?" a rescue worker yelled. In Thai culture, there are profound beliefs about death, especially a death this tragic. They believe that disturbing the dead, particularly in such a violent manner, is a grave taboo. Procedures involving the deceased are meant to be handled by monks or spiritual specialists who know the proper rites to guide the soul peacefully. What Krit did was the ultimate act of disrespect. He was scolded by everyone, but in the chaos of the moment, the priority was still to save the living. After the site was cleared, the group continued their journey to the campsite, Crit acting as if nothing had happened. He was completely unfazed, ready to party with his friends. That night, after setting up 3 tents, they had a few drinks and turned in. Denai was in one tent with his girlfriend, their other friend in another, and Crit in his own. Sometime deep in the night, Denai was jolted awake by a sound from Crit's tent. It was a whimpering, shivering sound, as if someone was freezing cold. Denai called out, "Crit, you okay?" The shivering continued. Worried, Denai unzipped his tent and walked over to Crit's tent. He opened it up and saw a figure in a sleeping bag, curled up and shaking violently. He reached in and touched the shoulder. "Crit, what's wrong?" Instantly the sound stopped. The figure went still. Denai figured he was just dreaming and pulled his hand back. As he stood up and zipped the tent closed, he turned around, and his blood ran cold. Crit was standing right behind him. "What are you doing at my tent?" Crit asked. I heard you were crying inside," Denai stammered. "No, you weren't," Crit replied, confused. "I just went to take a leak. I was walking back when I saw you messing with my tent." Denai's heart hammered in his chest. He whipped back around, tore open the zipper to Crit's tent, and looked inside. The sleeping bag was still there, still in the shape of a person curled up, but it was now completely flat. Just moments before, he had touched a solid form inside. He was sure of it. He didn't tell Crit what happened. He knew he wouldn't believe him anyway. The next day passed uneventfully. But that night, the terror returned. This time, everyone was woken up at once. A strained, gasping sound was coming from Crit's tent. "Hach, hach, hach." They all called out to him, but there was no answer. And then a new voice emerged from Crit's tent. It was a woman's voice, cold and filled with a rage that seemed to echo through the entire forest. "You took my child from me, so I will take you from your parents." The next morning, Crit was not himself. He was distant, his eyes vacant. He sat staring into space, making strange gestures with his hands as if he were playing with a small child. It was clear something was terribly wrong. They knew they had to get him out of there, to a hospital, or better yet, a temple to see a monk.
They managed to get a boat back to the pier and loaded into their pickup truck. Denai drove with his girlfriend beside him. Crit and the other friends sat the open truck bed, facing backward. As they drove back along that same winding road, approaching the crash site, a thick, unnatural fog rolled in, blanketing the road completely. They drove through it, and as they emerged on the other side, a frantic banging started on the back of the cab. Bang, bang, bang. Denai looked back and saw his friend desperately hitting the window, pointing at Crit, who had suddenly passed out. Denai knew he had to get down the mountain, fast. He sped down the road, and just as they reached the bottom, he saw lights on at a house where a gathering was taking place. Desperate, he pulled in. Villagers came out, asking what was wrong. Denai explained everything that had happened, from the accident to Crit's strange behavior. An old man's face grew grim. "The boy you're talking about, the one who pulled the baby out," the old man said, pointing to the house. "This is her house. This is her funeral." They had, by some impossible chance or unseen force, stopped directly in front of the funeral of the pregnant woman. It was as if they had been summoned. Denai, his girlfriend, and their friend knew what they had to do. They had to go in and pay their respects, to apologize on Crit's behalf. Crit himself was still unconscious in the back of the truck. Denai described walking into the house,
where the coffin was placed on a stand, surrounded by flowers. He lit an incense stick, prayed, and bowed his head. When he looked up, his eyes fell on the space beneath the coffin, between the legs of the stand. He saw the feet of a woman, wearing the same floral dress he remembered from the crash site. She was standing right behind the coffin, watching him. He stumbled backward in terror, right as a monk was walking by. The monk looked at him with knowing eyes. "You have been followed by something heavy, haven't you?" the monk said calmly. "And there is another one, isn't there? Where is he?" The monk followed them out to the truck and looked at the unconscious Crit. He simply shook his head. "If he wakes up," the monk said gravely, "tell him to make a lot of merit. He will need it in the life to come." He didn't even perform a blessing. It was a chilling omen. Crit eventually recovered at a hospital, the doctors blaming exhaustion and drinking. He went back to his hometown, and Denai returned to Bangkok. As the new school term approached, Crit needed to take a bus train back to the city. His mother later recounted the final moments of his life. Crit was at the bus station, using a payphone to call his parents. "I'm about to get on the bus now. Take care of yourselves." While he was still on the phone with them, security cameras captured a motorbike with two young men riding past. As they passed the phone booth, one of them pulled out a gun and shot Crit in the head. He died instantly, while his parents were still on the line, listening. It was a case of mistaken identity, a gang dispute. They shot the wrong person. Crit was taken from his parents at the exact moment he was speaking to them, just as the voice from the tent had promised. A truly harrowing story about consequences and the price of disrespect. A chilling reminder that there are some lines that should never be crossed. My thanks to the listener for sharing such a powerful and terrifying account. That's all the time we have for tonight on Gloomwood Radio. Until next time, stay safe and listen closely to the whispers in the dark. And don't forget, if you enjoyed the story, show your support. Hit like, share it with your friends, subscribe for more, and consider a super thanks. It means the world to us. Good night.